Hello, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to our Association Essentials series presented by HOALiving. My name is Greg Gardner and I will be presenting today. Wanted to give a brief overview of a couple of things, little shop talk, if you will. Next month, we'll be diving into your governing documents, and you're going to hear me say this a lot today, so that would be a good one to do because we typically tell you to check your governing documents when you're going to do something. So that'll be a great class to attend so we can show you exactly where we're talking about where to check. You can always go on with this QR code. You can go on the website, find any of our previous topics. We've been doing AES for several years, so there's several classes you can go back and look at. You can make sure any topic you can search, you can find, and then at the end of the year, we'll also send out a survey for you guys to give us some topics so that we can present on for the next year. We try to do some basic classes, a little bit higher level classes. We talk about insurance usually every year. We talk about legislative issues every year, things of that nature, but also things like governing documents or how to run a meeting. So we're open to all kinds of topics and happy to present on whatever it is that our board members want us to present. We want to give a shout out to Kimberly Graff, who has just received her PCAM, which is the highest designation in the CAI realm world. So PCAM is a Professional Community Association Manager, and we currently have 11 inside of the HOALiving network at this time. Congratulations, Kimberly. We also have our Community Manager of the Month, who is Chloe Arnell. Chloe brings such a unique and positive energy to everything that she does. She knows how to make others feel welcome, supported, and heard. She's an incredibly hard worker and does her homework, follows through, and never hesitates to step up. She is resourceful, dependable, and always learning. Congratulations, Chloe. Our board member of the month this month is Christina Moore from the Ledges of St. George Master Association. Christina goes above and beyond working closely with homeowners, whether building or making additions. She actively is engaged in the community. She leads with professionalism, commitment, and collaboration. Congratulations, Christina. You can always feel free to nominate either a board member or a community manager, and there's a QR code there, but you can also get that on the website. So today we're going to talk about preparing for annual meetings. Hopefully, as we're getting into what we lovingly refer to as annual meeting season, this will be helpful. So why do annual meetings matter? Well, this is really the only meeting of the members, right? Because board meetings are for board members, but the annual meeting is for homeowners. So we want to make sure that we make sure we know what we're going to be talking about. So we're looking at those governing documents. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about that a few times. It's an opportunity to let the owners know what's been going on if that hasn't been happening, but give a broad view of, hey, this is what we accomplished this year. We're going to elect new board members if terms are expiring, which typically they are every year. We're also going to set the tone for the expectations of this coming year. Are we going to do some big projects? Are we going to put in some new amenities? What are we going to do? We're going to do a new chili cook-off? Who knows? It could be crazy. We're also going to be very transparent, build trust with them, and show them and answer all their questions and make sure they know exactly what's going on inside their community. So what we really want to make sure that, again, this is their meeting. That's why they're going to have that open forum at the end to be able to ask questions. We're going to get some new board members because, again, some terms will be ending and some will continue. We're going to present the budget for them for the year, and we're going to listen to some issues. Now, it's important to note it is a meeting for them, and they get to talk, but we're not going to spend hours in this section of the meeting. Typically, and we'll talk about this a little later as well, but we're going to set time limits probably and say, hey, every homeowner gets 90 seconds or 2 minutes or however long, maybe depending on how many people show up. And the important thing is that the board's going to hear all of this, and they're going to take it into their board meetings and prioritize and make decisions. You're not making decisions at the annual meeting. It's more of a discussion period of time. So we want to plan for the worst, but hope for the best. How do we do that? Well, so there's some roles that the board are going to do, and there's some roles that the management are going to do. And obviously, we're going to work together to make sure all of these things are done. But the board's going to set the agenda. And this is really the reason we do this is because every board is different. right? There are some boards that say we want to do everything, and there's some boards that say we want to do nothing, and there's some that are in between. So this is important to understand. What we're going to set these expectations with the management and the board, and say, hey, what are you comfortable doing? What do you want us to do? And let's get everything covered. So again, we want to make sure that we're going through the financials. We want to make sure that we're talking about compliance if there's issues that are coming up. We want to talk about policies that were made if there was any rule changes. Obviously, we would have sent out notice and told everybody, but recap that. And going to preside over the meeting as a board member. With management, we're going to do all the legwork, right? We're going to do the logistics. We're going to prepare the notices. We're going to get the financial reports to you. We're going to maintain the ballots and the proxies, get those, make sure those are sent out correctly. Make sure we recoup them at the meeting, have somebody count them, and then send them out the results. We're going to make sure we have enough people at the meeting, because we're going to have to sign in at the beginning if we need people to help with counting, or if we're going to have volunteers. There's a couple different ways to do that, and we'll talk about that. So, but we want to partner together to make sure that all of these areas are covered. We're going to make sure that those that can vote are voting. We're going to make sure that we review the documents, that we give proper notice, proper time, and that everything is in compliance with the governing documents. So the board president is going to preside over the meeting. Typically, they announce the agenda and they help facilitate the discussion. Again, this is something that you can talk with your manager if you want them to help, but we like the board president to at least give a state of the union, if you will, welcome and overview of the past year. And here's some things we accomplished, here's some things we're working on. And it's important to do that because we want to make sure that we're covering the highlights that we want to get covered, and we want to stay positive and start off on a really good note. You're going to help maintain order. You're going to ensure fairness in the nominations and announce results. Now, again, you can have your manager help in some of these areas, but we would prefer that the president at least start the meeting and give that recap, so that everybody that's in attendance understands that this is run by the board. And if they want to delegate some of those other areas, they can. We have some boards that has each board member stand up and give a little spiel about what they're over. So maybe a report on the ARCs, or a report on landscaping, or whatever the case may be, over the pools. You can do that, or you can just do a summation in the president's review. That's really up to you. And I've seen it done both ways, and it works both ways. So it's what you're comfortable with. And that's something you can discuss with us as your management team. Some best practices and tips. We want to be transparent, right? If there's an elephant in the room, we want to present the elephant. So if there's murmurings of issues with whatever, we want to put our spin on it and say, this is what we're doing about it, so that when it gets raised up, maybe at the end in the homeowner section, we've already presented the facts, and then we can kind of talk about that and move on. We want to make sure everything's on the table that could be brought up. And we want to make sure that we're just being open and honest with everybody. We're not trying to hide anything. That's why we're going to go over the financials. We're going to go over, the voting, what the practice is, the best way to do it. Sometimes we ask for volunteers to do counting. If there's, sometimes people are like, we don't know. We don't want the management team to count the votes, or we don't want the board to count the votes. We're happy to do whatever. We're happy to do it. We're happy to facilitate it. We're happy to ask for volunteers. That's a good practice to do, to ask for volunteers. Just takes some people like that. So that's something you can do. We want to keep things clear and maybe not say what I said earlier, an ARC committee, an architectural review committee. So maybe not use acronyms and jargon. Make sure you're very clear. And most people, they come and they're like, whatever, do I have to pay more money? That's why they're at the annual meeting. So we want to use clear, concise sentences. We want to make sure they understand and get their questions answered for them. And then afterwards, just talk about it. What could we have done better? Let's make notes. Let's see if next year we want to, I don't know, have chips and salsa. Who knows? It could be anything, right? So there's all kinds of different things you can do to have a good meeting and to make it better even. So have a little chat afterwards and talk about it. So we always, if you take nothing else from this meeting, please listen to me right now. Give me 30 seconds. Always review your documents. As you can see with these bullet points, there are so many things that you need to make sure that you get right, because if you don't do some of these things, it could invalidate the meeting. So you want to make sure what has to go on the meeting notice. And you need to have your location, your date, your time. How soon do you have to send it? So does it need to be 30 days, but not less than 10? Does it need to be 60, but not less than 30? Do you have to send your budget out with your notice? What are the quorum requirements? Whose terms are coming up? So how many board positions are coming up for election? And then if there are some documents, and these are typically going to be found in your bylaws. Some documents have special rules for ballot voting. Are you doing ballot voting? Are you doing electronic ballot voting? How are you voting? And walking through that and making sure you understand the intricacies of the voting. So this is, and see the big yellow, this is going to be different for everybody because everybody's documents are a little bit different. But at the end of the day, you need to be looking at this probably a couple, 3-4 months before your annual meeting time, just to understand, if nothing else, how much time the notice needs to be sent out. But you need to have a meeting in the board, a board meeting that discusses this. So, okay, what do we need to do? Where are we doing it? How soon do we need to send out the notice? How are we sending it out? Are we putting it on their doors? Are we mailing it? Are we emailing it? Just talking through all of that so that everybody's on the same page. So the expectation is the same with the management as it is with the board. I always, typically you're sending out a notice usually 30 to 15 days before. I always like to send out an email reminder, a couple days before, because that might be too far in advance for some people. I live a day at a time, a quarter mile at a time, if you will. So yeah, I need that reminder a day or two before. Hey, just a reminder, we're meeting at the clubhouse at 7 o'clock for our annual meeting, or whatever the notice should be. And then we want to make sure who's doing the sign in and check in. Is it the manager? Is it the secretary? But who's going to do it? What are they getting out at the table? Because everybody gets one vote per household. You don't get a, hey, I brought my friends and my spouse and my kids. They all get a packet. Not if it has a ballot, because they only get one vote. So you just got to make sure there's clear instructions there at the check-in table as well. And then, like I said, after the meeting, you want to do a quick meeting and do officers, as well as just, hey, what can we do better, and what can we do better going forward, and meetings afterwards. So financials, we're gonna present the budget. In that budget, we're gonna talk about the reserves. So typically we shout out, hey, here are the 2 projects that are on your reserve study this year. Say it's replacing the roads or it's replacing the roofs. Here's the money that we have for it. And that goes hand in hand with the budget, because sometimes you need to raise your assessments to cover that, or you need to talk about a special assessment, hopefully not. So we're going to give a balance sheet that shows where the money is. We're going to talk about maybe some, why we had to raise it because of inflation, or we didn't have to raise it. So we're going to make sure, hey, this is giving the whole picture to our residents, right? They're going to have access to these financials on their portal every month so they can see them. But this is really the time to talk about that and point out, hey, we were over this year. We brought in a lot of extra money, so we put it into our reserves. Or, hey, we were deficient because insurance went up, or whatever. And just have those talking points and help them understand why, if it's going up, or why if it's not, it's not. So the reserve study is really important. And it's also state law that you talk about the reserve study when you're presenting your budget. So we want to make sure that you're letting them know if there were projects that were supposed to have been done that didn't get done, or if there's projects that are coming up this next year and what they are and what it looks like and how you're going to fund them, right? So this will be in their portal. They'll be able to go see the reserve study. So if they have questions, you can always refer them to that. But just a basic understanding of it, of, hey, this is how much we have in it. We'll usually have a little snapshot. This is how much we have, and these are the projects that are going to be for this year, and have, a 2 or 3 minute conversation about that. So this is a typical meeting notice. Again, check your documents, because some documents call out for specific things for your community, but this is a general one. So it's going to have the location, the time. You want to make sure you don't just say the clubhouse, you give the address in case there are residents that don't live in the neighborhood, right? If this is a second home or a vacation home or whatever, give them the address. You're going to give them the quorum requirements so that everybody knows. If you allow proxies, you're going to give them the proxy information. So if they can't be there and they want to have somebody else go in their stead, then they can have a proxy. You're going to give them a general tentative agenda. It could change, obviously, and you'll give them an agenda when they come to the meeting, but this is your best guess of what the agenda will be. And again, it should be pretty easy, because you're doing a welcome, you're giving them the financials, you're doing the update will probably be before the financials. You're going to do board elections, and you're going to have a homeowner forum. That's typically your agenda for every annual meeting. If you're eating or doing whatever, you typically do it after the meeting. And there you go. So then if you are doing an election, which you probably are, you maybe give some information about that as well. Because if you're doing it electronic, you'll want to tell them that. If their ballots at the meeting, they would be handed that, you would give them instructions. But this will let them know who typically is running, how many positions are open. And so just getting them that information so they know what to expect when they come to the meeting. So we want to make sure if you need to, if you don't have a clubhouse, if you're going to the library, for example, or one of our offices, just making sure that place is secure. Making sure you have the date right and you're there and you're ready to go. We always want to consider any accommodations that need to be made. Do we need to have an interpreter? Has anybody requested any of those things? So that's something in that prep that you want to make sure you're talking with the board and making sure, hey, has anybody requested an interpreter? Has anybody asked for special accommodations so that we can make sure that every owner can attend the meeting and feel like they can participate if they want to. Again, we want to make sure that we are on the same page with our sign-in sheets, proxies, and ballots. We want to make sure there's pens available if it's a write-in ballot. And again, you typically check your documents, but typically you get one vote per unit, not per owner, because you could have a group that has 5 people in it. One vote per unit, right? So a single family home, a condo, a townhome, you typically get one, unless it's a condo and it's par value, but that's a discussion for another day. I always like to have a copy of the documents with me just in case someone wants to, argue with me or say, hey, you're not doing this right. So have a copy of the bylaws typically is where you're going to find most of this information. And usually I even bring a hard copy because it's hard to show somebody on your phone sometimes or your laptop. So I have a hard copy or two that I can hand to them and it's already highlighted and ready to go. And then if it's a large crowd, you have a projection, you want to show slides, just make sure that that's set up beforehand, run through it quickly to make sure that it doesn't take a lot of time. I really appreciate when people come to these meetings. And so I want to respect their time. If we've allocated an hour for this meeting, then I want it to be an hour. Now, if people want to stay afterwards and talk, great, but let's get through the business. And if they want to do that, that's great. I just don't want to hold anybody hostage. If they thought it was an hour and we're 3 hours into it, that's a problem. So we want to make sure that we're very clear on our agenda, what we're getting through. And that's why when I mentioned, maybe we talk about, hey, 90 seconds per homeowner input at the end or whatever the case may be. But we want it to be flowing. We want to answer everybody's questions, but we also want to respect their time. So again, making sure that we get notices out. If there are bios for candidates, making sure we get that out to them. If they want to see the financials are already in the portal, so they would be able to follow along with those. If we want to do any kind of Q&A, if there's a big like a big road project that's coming up that we're going to have to shut down roads for asphalt repair, if we have that information like in maps or things and send that out before so they can look at it and then bring questions to the meeting. Any of that is great. If you have a nominating committee, obviously getting with them so that they can do their job and get those nominations beforehand so that they're ready for it at the annual meeting. And I put this on here. Look, I think everybody should serve on a board at least once. That's the philosophy according to Greg. Because I think if you walk a mile in their shoes, it just helps people understand how things run. And so I always throw that out there. You don't have to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company to serve on a board. People always ask me, they're like, what's the best makeup of a board? And I always say, I like male and female, I like old and young, and I like owners and renters. If I can have that diversity, that's really going to make a great board. And when you have discussion on things, you're going to hear all kinds of different opinions. So that's the best makeup for me for a board. Some people may agree or disagree, but again, that's the gospel according to Greg. So when you're conducting a meeting, and again, typically this is the president that does this, but we want to get ahead of anything that might turn contentious. So that's in that president's report. We want to get ahead of if, hey, we had a rough time doing the roads, or that this happened or this happened. We're fully aware of it. They're coming back. They're fixing it. Getting yours take on the situation out in front of everybody so that it doesn't turn into a mob mentality at the end is a great way to diffuse a situation. On that note, if it's going to get maybe a little controversial or hostile, talk about that as a board. Do you need to have a uniformed officer there? Do you have plans if it goes sideways? What are you going to do? Make sure that has been talked about. So you never want to be put on the spot without a plan. And so your manager will help with that. Here's scenario A, B, and C. C being we cancel the meeting or adjourn the meeting. But hopefully we never get to that point, but having a plan in place just in case you have to. We want to make sure that everybody knows exactly, like if you're in a library, maybe there's a sign at the front, another sign this way to the meeting. So there's very clear, nothing is worse than somebody going somewhere and not being able to get to the meeting because they didn't know where it was. So we want to make sure there's clear signage, clear directions. And we want to be fair to everybody, but we want to be consistent too. So if we've announced to everybody that we're going to give them 90 seconds, I always give them a heads up. Hey, you've got 15 seconds left. And if they say, well, Bob's not going to talk, I'm going to take their time. No, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to be fair and consistent, give everybody the same amount of time. And if it turns from a HOA concern into a personal concern, it's okay to step in and say, you know what, we're going to talk to you after the meeting, because again, we're going to be conscious of everybody's time. So I'll get with you after the meeting and we can have this discussion. This is for general discussions about the HOA. So, and again, the board's going to listen. They're not going to vote on anything. That would be in future board meetings. We want to stay ahead of the negative, so bringing it up early, talking about it, but we also want to point out the positive. We want people to enjoy living in this neighborhood. We want them to hear what the great work the board's been doing and point those things out. So some things we want to avoid: insufficient notice or meeting. If you're missing required proxies or you don't have the right stuff on the notice, the meeting notice, this can be a real problem. Inaccurate financials is unexcusable, right? We have plenty of time to make sure we put that together, so we're going to make sure that we do that. And then knowing the answers, like if there's $10,000 in contingency and you didn't budget for that, what's that for? Why did it get there? So if there's a big discrepancy, either positive or negative, just understand why that is so you can have a talking point. And again, your manager is going to be able to do this, but just making sure the board's on the same page with them so that there's no surprises for you either, because you don't want to get cornered as a board member and not have an answer, right? So just talk about it, make sure everybody's on the same page and has the same expectations. What happens if quorum is not met? What do you do? What does your document say that you should do? What happens if you're starting to get late on time? Or what happens if it goes sideways? Like, again, have a plan, talk about that. And if there's legal challenges or disputes, okay, we appreciate that. We'll talk about that after the meeting. Let's get through the business of the meeting, because again, we want to make sure we get the new board voted on, and we want to take care of get the budget out there to everybody, so everybody knows exactly how much they're paying and who to talk to if there's an issue. But we will take sidebars after the meeting. We won't disrupt the workflow of the annual meeting. So in summary, there's a lot of things that you shouldn't do, right? But the best way to know how to not do those things is checking your governing documents. Make sure you understand exactly when the notice needs to go out, what needs to be on the notice, how you're voting, if you want to do ballots or if you want to do electronic voting. Just being very clear with the expectations of what you're doing at this meeting, and be prepared. Have pens for people. Again, if they're going to be writing in on the ballots, have pens for them. If you're doing audio visual with slides, make sure you have all the equipment you need. Make sure that's ready and working. And again, because you're putting out financials every month, there's probably not going to be too many questions about the financials, because if you have board meetings, you're talking about it. Those things have already come up. And if you presented it in the president's report, you got ahead of it and say, hey, we're very aware of that. We're short $5,000 because we had this legal issue and we had to move some money over. And obviously you're not going to talk about legal issues, but you can bring it up and say that's why it happened, and then move on. Safety is always important. It's paramount for us, and that's both for the homeowners, the board, and the manager. So we're always concerned in making sure that it's a safe environment for everybody. And that's important, because if it becomes hostile or goes sideways, again, you should have a plan in place on how you're going to resolve that. And you want to make sure that you're very clear with people. You give them a warning first. You don't just say, hey, we're during the meeting, see you later. But you can be very kind, and clear is kind, we like to say. This is what's going to happen. You're going over your time, and you're monopolizing the time of others. We need you to sit down. Thank you for sharing your opinion. And then moving on. If that doesn't happen, what do you do? And you'll have already talked about that and know what to do. And then obviously after the meeting, again, follow up, talk to the new board members, get their information, decide if you're going to have a quick meeting right there so that you get your roles sorted out, who's going to be the president, the vice president, or what's going to happen next. So that's a summary of what you do at an annual meeting. So let's open it up to questions. I just went through a lot of information really fast, but let's open it up to questions and see what you have, and let's get you taken care of. Oh, or you can leave us a 5-star Google review, I guess. There you go. There's the Q&A. Let's see if we have any questions on the line.
As of right this minute, there's not any in the Q&A. Down at the bottom of your screen, or if you're in the web version, it may be at the top. There is a Q&A button. You can submit a question there, or you can raise your hand and I can unraise it or let you speak so you can ask Greg a question.
Again, just a simple recap, check your governing documents. I've said it a few times, but I can't emphasize that enough. Because if you don't, and the meeting becomes invalid because you didn't have quorum or you sent out the wrong notice, you're going to have to do it again. And you might have spent money sending out notices, and you're going to have to do that again. So we want to be very clear that just getting ahead and making sure you understand exactly, even if you've been on the board for 5 years, you're like, this is how we've always done it. Just double check, make sure you understand exactly what the requirements are so that you can do it properly.
Greg, can you go back to the tips for success slide for a minute? Darren is asking to see that again. Just to let everybody on the call know, we will be sending out a link to the recording of this as well as the slides, so that you can have access to that via email after as well.
Okay.
So, okay, say someone in the association gets upset in July. The annual meeting was in December. And they start going back and they realize I didn't get notice, and they start to point fingers and challenge it. What does it mean when it invalidates it? Like what could happen from when a board member was elected in December and a homeowner gets to July and starts challenging what happened in the annual meeting? Can you kind of walk through what a board might face?
Yeah. So again, if you followed the right procedures, you would then have a copy of the notice and say this was sent to you. If it was sent electronically, we would have records of that. If it was door hanged, that's different, right? We can say, well, on this day we hang it, but you would walk them through the process of how that notice was sent, and also remind them, sometimes if it's mailed, you might not have opened it, but somebody in your household did. So there's a couple different options to talk through that. It's rare that notice doesn't get sent out. So usually there's a record of it or some way to verify that we've done that. If for some reason that didn't happen, we would have to sit down and have a discussion. But I would think that if that did happen, you would know it well before July. So this sounds like an interesting scenario, but I would verify how the notice was sent and remind them that it could have been sent. Somebody could have opened the email, somebody could have opened the mail. And we can show what day that happened or when it was sent or how it was sent, especially if it was like electronic voting. I mean, there's records of that. So yeah, we would hopefully be able to provide some of those records so they got the notice. Because if the issue is, hey, I didn't get the notice, I didn't know about the meeting, that's a pretty easy issue to resolve because you usually have records for that. Now, whether they came or not, you can't, I mean, that's up to them. But yeah, as far as the notice requirement, I mean, you could also have other neighbors or whoever, hey, yes, we got it on this date, and talk to them and make sure. But yeah, typically that's a unlikely scenario just because it would have been so long after, but we do have those records, so we would be able to show and prove that.
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to say, I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Yes.
So say we do find out that we made a mistake and
Okay.
it's invalid. So does that just mean we have to just do a vote of board members, or does it invalidate everything that happened since that election?
So if we found out in July that the meeting that we had in December, the notice was not correct, and so it wasn't a valid meeting, we would call a new meeting and vote again, because we would want to make sure that we did it correctly. We would let everybody know the results that happened the first time and say, hey, you know what, we would own up to it. A mistake was made. So we're going to call an emergency annual meeting, and we're going to go through the motion again and make sure we have a valid vote for those board members.
Awesome. And I'm not at all suggesting like this happens very often, just the risk side of it. Like,
No, for sure.
what do we need to know? Like, what could
Yeah,
this impact? It's not
what
just a
typically
email.
happens is that in July, somebody doesn't like a decision the board made and they say, hey, I want to see the ballots. I want to count the ballots. I don't think they were counted right. That's usually more common. And so typically, again, if it's a handwritten ballot, we're going to scan we're going to have a record of it. Now, we only keep those for 2 years, I believe. And so obviously if they come back, hey, 5 years ago, you did that. No, we're not going to do that. But yes, we do keep it definitely for the current year, and we'll have that scan, and we can provide that. They can come into the office and look at that. But we always have the ballots checked and then double checked. But that usually is something more likely that's going to come up is that not that you didn't notice the meeting correctly, is that, hey, I'm challenging the results of the voting or something of that nature.
Okay, great. I don't know what happened with that recording there. But we do have a question from Mary Ann. She said, what if
Okay.
you have a board member leave and you have not replaced that board member? So it leaves you with 4 board members and not the 5. Although they do have quorum, we could have a tied vote.
Okay, so you're talking at a board meeting, not necessarily at an annual meeting. So you would need to look in your bylaws and see what it is that you need to do to replace that board member. Usually your bylaws say that the board can appoint somebody to that position and then it's voted on at the annual meeting. So for that very scenario. So check your bylaws and see what they say. But usually as a board, you can say, hey, you know what? Beth has moved, so we're gonna put John in her role, in her term. And then at the annual meeting, if there's additional time, then have the owners vote on it.
Great. Let's see.
And some just say you could appoint them and the owners don't have to vote in that scenario. So just check your bylaws.
So you're saying we need to read documents. I think
Yeah, it's weird.
so.
Yes. Yeah, definitely check your documents. Your bylaws will spell all of that out because in your bylaws, it'll tell you the terms, it'll tell you how to have the meeting. If there's a date that's required, you have to have it on. It'll have all that in your bylaws.
Great. Okay, I am not seeing any other questions and there's no hands raised. But like I mentioned earlier, we will be sending out a follow-up email that will have more information related to this topic, as well as a recording of this training. So if you have other board members in your association or even homeowners who are asking, what should I expect during the board meeting? This may be helpful for them, not the board meeting, excuse me, the annual meeting. This may be helpful for them to hear that. I did want to point out one part. You had mentioned during the reserve study presentation that it is state law to present it. I think it depends on the state, what is the actual rule of what you need to do there. So not only do you need to review your governing documents, but make sure that state statutes are followed, which is why having a good management partner will help you through that. But as a board, you do have that responsibility. So making sure you're aware that those are the things your manager is checking and going to advise you on. And it may be different depending on which state you're in. And for sure, your association's individual documents. So
yeah, and most of the states that we're in has language about what has to be presented. So even though I said in, state legislation, there are most of the states that we manage in. Now it differs from state to state. So you're exactly right. Check those documents. Weird. Check the documents. But it'll say, you need to talk about this, or you need to talk about in some states, it just says you have to talk about the amount. Some says you have to talk about the projects. The language varies a little bit, but yes, that is a very great point. Check also, and your manager will know that, but double check. That's why we say check and double check everything. You want to make sure that you hit those requirements as well.
hey, let's see. Can you go back to the governing document slide that was right after best practices for a moment for Mary?
Yep.
There you go. All right, well, we will go ahead and conclude now. Thank you so much for presenting this, Greg. If we get any other questions, feel free to reply back to the email with the links, and we'll be happy to help you out. We hope you have a wonderful annual meeting season. We're looking forward to it and actively working on budgets with all managers and getting prepared for that next season for you. You guys have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.